Dear students, welcome to today's class. In today's class, we are going to discuss the seventh part of the research proposal series. Now, in the last lectures, we have covered all of the blue marked points here. So we have covered what the title of the research project is, we have covered literature review, research question, broad objective and specific objectives, and references. Now in this video, we are going to cover three very easy concepts, which are research limitations, ethical considerations, and time scale or a Gantt chart. Trust me, these topics are really easy. So let's move on. So as I said earlier, these three topics are in today's lesson plan. Now let's start with the research limitations. Now trust me, whatever you are thinking by just reading the term research limitations, it is exactly like that. So this is actually talking about some sort of limitations or shortcoming. So let me start the formal definition first. These are the things that we should have done in our research in order to have a very good research report, but we could not do it because of some reason. So we are talking about some sort of shortcoming here or our limitations, right? Don't worry if you haven't understood the definition clearly as of yet. Let me give you the examples and then it will be much clearer to you. Let's move on to the examples. Now, the first example is very much relatable to all of you guys. You will be happy to see the first one. So the first example is time constraints, right? I guess all of you can relate. So if you had 2 long years to finish this project, you could have come up with a very good report, right? You could have done everything, but you have only 2 or 3 months. So that is why we cannot do all the things that we need to do in a thorough research project. So time constraint is one of the limitations here. Now let's move on to the next example. Budget constraints. If we had a very good amount of money to spend for doing this research, we could have done a lot of things in our study. Like we could have spent money to go to different people's house and talk to them and collect data, right? Even we could have flown to India or South Africa or even the USA to collect data if we had the money, but we don't have it. So we will not be able to do all the things that we need to do to have a thorough research report, right? So that is also one of the constraints or limitations of our research. Now let's move on to the last example. Could not collect sufficient online survey response or interviews. Say we wanted to collect online survey response from 500 people. So you knocked all of your friends on Facebook. But I guess all of you by now have the experience where you knock 500 friends, but only 100 of them reply or 150 of them replies. Right? So that is one of the shortcomings as well. Same thing applies when you go to a friend and ask for an interview, or even an unknown person and ask for an interview. That person might not be willing to give you the interview. I guess all of you will be able to relate if you just take a look at this photo. So whenever you ask someone for an interview, for a long interview, that person just wants to run away from you, right? That's very common. I guess many of you have faced that. So yes, that is one of the major limitations as well. And I'm sure many of you will face this limitation when you start doing your own research and collecting data. So yes, by now I'm sure the concept of research limitation is clear to many of you. So these are the shortcomings of doing our research. Now let's move on to the next concept, which is ethical considerations. What do we mean by ethical considerations? Again, it is as easy as the previous one. So by just listening to the name, some of you may be able to guess what do I mean by ethical considerations. So what is the formal definition? Have we maintained ethics while conducting research? So it is as simple as that. Was proper ethics maintained while conducting a research? Now, how does ethics become a part in research? What type of ethics do we need to maintain? Let me give you the examples and then it will be clear to you. So, the first example. No one has been harmed in this research. Now, I am sure when you have seen a movie, many of you have noticed that in some movies, as a disclaimer, there is a part where it says that in filming many parts of the movie, no animal was harmed, right? So it is exactly like that. In many scientific research, the scientists need to ensure that yes, no harm was done while conducting this research. This ethical consideration is not that much applicable to business research. What are the ones that is more applicable to business area? Let's move on to some of those examples. Number two, confidentiality and anonymity of data. This is very, very important. So we have to keep our data confidential and anonymous. What do I mean by that? Let me elaborate this part a little bit further. Say I have collected data from Mostanzir, Aditi, Maisha, and Osama. So I know that I have talked to them and I have collected data from them. Now, as I did the interview, I know who exactly said what. What did Aditi say? What did Mustanzir say? What did Maisha say? And what did Osama say? That is okay. But when I publish this interview data or interview findings in a report or a paper, I cannot reveal their identity. I cannot say that Maisha said this. I cannot say that Aditi said this. This is not allowed. So I have to either use a pseudonym or a made up name, or I can say that person 1 said this, person 2 said this, person 3 said this. So we cannot reveal their true identity. That is a crime. That is very offensive and that is something we cannot do. So we have to keep the collected data confidential and anonymous. Alright, now the last example regarding ethics. The last one is informed consent has to be taken. So no means no. So again, if somebody is unwilling to give the interview, you cannot force that person. You have to take consent of that person. And the most important point is the consent has to be explicitly taken. So if you are taking a face-to-face interview or a face-to-face survey, that person has to explicitly sign that yes, he or she is willing to participate in the survey. And if you are taking an online survey, in that case again, you have to explicitly take consent. How? You have to write down that the participant is willing to take part in this survey. And after that, there has to be an option where the person can click and choose the I accept option. So again, it has to be an explicit consent. It is a must. So these are all the issues we need to consider when doing a thorough research. And that is what we mean by ethical considerations. Now let's move on to the last point, which is Gantt chart. What is a Gantt chart? Gantt chart is basically a timeline that shows at what time different parts of the project or the research will be started and finished. So this is simply a timeline. Let me give you an example here. Then it will be easy to all of you. So here is an example of a Gantt chart. Now, Gantt chart is not applicable to research project only. The timeline or the Gantt chart can be applicable to any project, be it a movie making project or a marketing campaign project, anything. So the timeline can be of anything. So here we have an example of a Gantt chart of a movie making project. So if you look at the left hand side here, you will see the different tasks under the movie making project. So we have pre-production, then finalizing the script, then script breakdown, then location scouting and everything. And on the top, we have different dates. So let me explain here. So the finalized script phase. So this activity starts from here and ends here. So it is a 3-day long project which starts on Monday 6th and finishes on Wednesday the 8th. Next task, script breakdown. It is a 5-day project which starts on Wednesday 8th and finishes on Sunday 12th. And in the similar manner, all the remaining projects are shown here. So by looking at this timeline or Gantt chart, we can have an idea that when exactly each separate task is going to start and when it is going to end. So that is basically a Gantt chart. Now let's take a look at an example of a Gantt chart of a research project. So this one is taken from the sample research proposal that I have uploaded to your BUX account. It is at the very end of the document. So here, as you can see, we have different tasks on the left hand side, and at the top we have different months. So the first task, choose research topic, it starts in January and it ends in January as well. Then the second task, literature review, it started in January and it went up till June. Now the next task, identifying the research question, it started in January and finished by February. So, and in the similar manner, we have listed all the remaining tasks. And if we take a look at this Gantt chart, we can see that the submission of the final project or dissertation or the research report was done in the month of August. So this is a visual representation of the whole timeline or Gantt chart. So again, why do we need this? Because the instructor or the supervisor needs to have an idea that yes, this is a basic timeline of the project and this is the time when the research is going to start and the time when it is going to end. So again, this is just a visual representation of the Gantt chart. Alright, so we are done with research limitations. We have also seen ethical considerations and finally we have covered Gantt chart. So that's all for this video. See you guys very soon.